the five skandhas and the six sense bases. Chapter 1, the five skandhas, or the five aggregates. Buddhism looks on things as aggregates of component parts. They have no abiding essence. When the components are taken away, no self or entity remains. A simple example that is often cited is the cart. When the various components are put together, or designed as a cart, but when all the components are separated, no entity cart can be found. There is no entity of a cart apart from the components, only the destination cart given to the state that results when they are put together. The components themselves manifest as results of compounding of even lesser components. Likewise, no real essence can be found within them. When we say that things exist, it must be understood in the sense that they exist as aggregates of components. Since it sees things as aggregates of components in this way, Buddhism must proceed to show what these components are, what they are like, at least in illustration, and since the teaching has a special concern with life, especially its mental aspect, its explication must encompass both matter and mind, the physical, Buddhadhamma, and the mental, Buddhadhamma. It gives special emphasis to the mind. There are many ways to present the components of life, depending on the purpose intended. But here we will be explaining the five skandhas, the five groups. The model preferred to the discord is Kanha, if we're going to say ocean tide. Analyzing according to the five skandhas, Buddhism dissects life, including all of its component parts, which we designate as a being, an individual, and so on, into five types of groups. When anybody asks about what is the purpose of life, the real question is, what is life? And life is made up of five skandhas: the rupa, our sense, rupa, our physicality, the entire gamut of physical components, the body and all its manifestation, or matter and physical energy together with their properties and activities. Vedana is the feeling and sensation, the feelings of pleasure, suffering, indifference that arise from contact through the five physical senses, and the mind being the sixth. Sanya is our perception, determining or perceiving, that is, apprehending or recognizing modality, signs, and features that enable the remembrance of cognitive objects, Ramana. Sankhara, these are mental formations or volitional activities, the factors and the qualities of mind led by intention that condition the mind to be good, the mind to be evil, or the mind to be neutral, neither good nor evil. In simple terms, it is the various good and the bad thoughts, such as satana, faith, recollection or mindfulness, sati, and metta, goodwill, compassion, karuna, and equanimity, upekha. Emphasis on panya, wisdom, delusion, moha, and greed, lobha, and hatred, dosa. Our consciousness, vijnanan, is the awareness of objects through the five physical senses, and the mind being the sixth. Our seeing, our hearing, our smelling, our tasting, experiencing sensations through the body, and the awareness of these mental objects. These five groups of the five skandhas, or the five aggregates, makes up what is life, with the emphasis on the practicality. The last four skandhas, which are all mental conditions, require further explanation. Sanya is perception. It's a form of knowledge. It's an apprehension of the attributes of an object of awareness, such as its figures, its features, its color, its shape, also its names, conventions, and the concepts such as green, red, loud, or soft. This registering of sense objects is done by juxtaposition and comparison of old experiences and new ones. If the new experiences correspond with the old ones, for example, in seeing or hearing a familiar person or an object, that is called recognition. Note that recognizing is not remembering. Sanya, sati, and memory. If the new experience does not correspond with an old experience are used as a frame of reference to see in what ways that are similar and dissimilar. That object is just registered according to what has been found out or noted. This is the action of noting or perceiving as. There are many different levels of this noting in accordance with conventions based on ordinary knowledge, such as green, white, yellow, red, noted in accordance with worldly, social, cultural, and traditional values, such as polite or impolite, noting in accordance with personal preferences and ideas as this doesn't look good or that is beautiful, noting on two levels, for example, 2 strikes of the bell signals mealtime, and even noting on the basis of one's study and practice of Satanat Dharma, the Buddha Sasana or dispensation, as when notice impermanence or selflessness. There are simple levels of noting and the complex levels of noting, and that they are more involved with other skandhas. There are noting of material objects and noting of mental objects. The words that are commonly used to translate sanya is recognizing, marking, noting, regarding, registering, perceiving as. All shows different shades of the meaning of the sanya group of perception. In simple terms, sanya is the process that collects, collates, stores the data of experiences as raw materials for the thinking process. Sanya is useful in the conduct of human life, but it is also not without its dangers because people tend to cling to things according to their perceptions. Then sanya becomes an obstruction to seeing the true nature of things. For the convenience of the study, sanya can be divided into 2 broad levels, basic or simple sanya, which notes the future of objects of awareness as they generally arise, derived or complex sanya, which is sometimes referred to by other names, especially papa cha sanya, which is sanya derived from objects of awareness, fabricated and complicated by desire, conceit, and views, which are the leading kinds of malignant sankhara. Analyzing sanya in this way helps to show more clearly the meaning of sanya in operation and its relationships to the other skandhas within the natural process. In the monistic tradition, vijnana is a gross of knowing clearly. It is the consciousness of sense objects, the fundamental kind of knowledge, that standing awareness, as it were. It is both the base from which the medium through which and the other mental skandhas function and are interconnected with one another. It is both preliminary awareness and subsequent awareness. By preliminary awareness, it's meant the initial awareness of seeing, hearing, and so on. The arising of consciousness, depending on which there are feelings, vedana, or pleasures or stress, recognitions as this or that, sanya, and the volitional response and fabrication of sankhara. By subsequent awareness is meant awareness in conjunction with the activities of the other skandhas. For example, when one feels happy and contented, which is vedana, there is also an awareness of the happy. Noted that the feeling happy and the awareness of the feeling of happiness are not the same. When one feels depressed, there is an awareness of this unpleasant feeling. In the perception of happiness and suffering, there is an awareness involved. Whenever there is thinking or intention, there's also an awareness of that. The fundamental stream of awareness, which is constantly and continually arising and ceasing in conjunction with the other mental skandhas or activities of the mind. This is called vijnana. Another distinctive feature of vijnana or consciousness is that it is a distinguishing awareness or an awareness in the light of specific meaning. This may be illustrated through some examples. When one sees a striped piece of cloth, the actual scene, even without any noting of what the object is, also entails an awareness of some of existence characteristics, such as some specific and distinctive colors. This is the awareness of a level of consciousness. Because consciousness sees that distinction, sanya can perform the function of recognizing those distinctive features, as in identifying the striped object in the hand of the towel from past recollections. When one is eating a piece of fruit, even if one does not recognize a specific sweet or sour taste, there's an awareness of a distinctive taste itself, whether sweet or sour. Moreover, even in a sweet or sour taste, there's an awareness of the distinctive taste, even if there's no recognition of the taste as the sourness of a mango, plum, a tamarind, lemon, or a pineapple, or the sweetness of a particular kind of banana or an apple. This kind of awareness is consciousness. It is the fundamental awareness that acts as the base which functions to other mental skandhas, as in experiencing a taste pleasant or unpleasant. Vedana, recognizing it's a particular kind of sweetness or sourness of sanya. So that recognizing comes from our past recollection of it, of our past perception of it, or recollection of that knowledge. And either arises in our feeling is vedana, either pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Consciousness as awareness in the light of specific meaning can be briefly explained thus. When consciousness arises, such as seeing or hearing, it is actually only seeing or hearing some specific aspect or meaning of what is seen or heard. In other words, it is seeing or hearing in the light of specific aspect or meaning we assign to it, depending on the mental activities that conditioned it. For example, in the middle of a large open field stands a solitary mango tree. It is a large tree, but it only has a few mangoes, sparse leaves, and hardly any shades. 5 people approach that tree in different circumstances. One is fleeing a dangerous animal. One is starving. One is seeking shelter from the hot sun. One is looking for fruits to sell. And one is looking for a place to tether her cow while she goes off to tend to some business nearby. All those 5 people see the big mango tree, but each will consciously of the sight from a different perspective, and within the context of different meaning, consciousness arises for them all, but it's different for each of them. according to the intention each has relation to the tree. At the same time, the perceptions of each person will differ according to the context of meaning in which he or she sees the tree, as too will the feelings that arise. For instance, the person who is fleeing a dangerous animal might be pleased at the sight of such a big tree because he sees it as an escape from danger. The starving person might also be pleased because only 3 or 4 mangoes will be sufficient to save her life. The person suffering from a hot sun might be disappointed on finding the tree has less shade than others expected for one of its size. The person looking for fruits to sell will be unhappy on finding the number of fruits so small. The person looking for a place to tie up her cow may be pleased, but only mildly so, simply relieved that she doesn't have to lead the cow any further to find somewhere else to tether it. Vedana is commonly, Vedana is feeling. The feeling is commonly translated as having a sensation or experiencing the flavor of a sense object that arises. It is a feeling towards an object of awareness, and it arises every time an awareness occurs. This feeling is minute in seconds. It may be one pleasant, such as comfort, happiness, or delight. Or it might be pain, oppression, suffering, and so on. Or it might be neither of those. It could be indifference. To prevent the confusion with sankhara, it should be understood that Vedana is a passive function of the mind. It involves the effects that experiences have on the mind. Vedana is not included within the mind's intentions towards the response to objects of awareness, as that of the domain of Sakara Rakanda, such as words like and dislike are usually used to describe activities of Sankara Skanda as movements contingent on, but distinct from feeling, Vedana, because like and dislike have elements of intention. They're all active responses to the objects of awareness. Vedana, this feeling is important in that when it is pleasant, it is aspired to and sought after. And when it is unpleasant, it is abhorred and is shunned. Each time awareness arises, Vedana is the pivotal link that influences the direction in which other factors will proceed. If one becomes aware of an object and pleasant feelings arises, one would note that object intensely, and in such way that feeling is prolonged and will create ways of repeating or extending that experience, and so forth. Sankhara includes both the conditions led by intention, which is cetana, that fashions the mind's qualities or states. So the intentions that we put into something fashions the qualities or the states of our mind, and the process of volition that directs, selects, and organizing those qualities in conditions by actions of speech, by actions of thought, and by actions resulting in bodily, verbally, and mental action, which we call karma. However, in explaining Sankhara as one of the 5 skandhas, the objective is to show the state of the nature, that is, what life is made up of, rather than the process of nature, that is, how life functions. Thus, the explanation of Sankhara in the 5 skandhas is usually limited to a description of the mind's conditioners. For example, what they are and what they are like. The explanation of Sankhara as a process of conditioning, which deals with the functional level, is given in the teachings of the principle of dependent origination, Patisha Samupata. And there's 12 dependent originations that link together. that through the laws of cause and effect, it goes from one thing to another, uh, which shows how life functions. Thus, in the teaching of dependent arising, Sankara is described as an operation divided into kaya sankara, the conditioning through which intention expresses itself in bodily actions, or the intention that conditions bodily action, vachi sakara, the condition through which intention expresses itself in the speech, or the intention that conditions speech. Seta, sita sankara, the conditions that which intention expresses itself in thinking, or the intention that conditions thoughts. By contrast, the explanation of sankara in terms of the five skandhas, the five aggregates, describes the various factors that do the conditioning, such as satana, faith, sati, mindfulness, metta, goodwill, lopa, greed, dosa, anger, cetana, intention, and samadhi, concentration. The explanation of sankara in terms of the five skandhas or the five aggregates is like a car on display showing its various components, while the explanation in terms of the principle of dependent arising, which we dealt with later, is like the description of a car in operation. Of all the factors that condition the mind, intention is foremost, the most important, the most pivotal, the most, no matter how many conditioning factors arise at any one time, intention will always be at the core. Sometimes the word cetana is even used to represent sankara as a whole. Thus, giving us another definition of sankara, sankara is intention, and it associates qualities, Buddhadhamma, which conditions the mind into good, conditions the mind into evil, or it is neither nor good nor evil. It's a neutral state. It molds thinking, it molds the speech and the actions, and it causes karma, the action through body, speech, and mind. The word cetana, intention alone, is sometimes used as a synonym for sankara. For it's used in defining sankara. Cetana is also used to define karma, which means action. Thus, in this sense, the words sankara, cetana, and karma have roughly the same meaning, apart from the importance already described. The factor of intention is always what distinguishes sankara from the other skandhas. Vedana, sanya, and vijnana work on a cognitive objects already arisen. They are contingent on cognitive objects, dependent on them in order to function, and passive, whereas sankara can be self-initiating. It exerts will and cognitive objects and act upon them. In this light, it's easier to see why it is the pleasure and pain that are classified as Vedana, while like and dislike, which arise subsequent to pleasure and pain, are classified as Sankara, why Sanya and Sati, which are both connected to memory, are nevertheless classified into different skandhas or aggregates. Sati is classed as Sankara, and why Panya, wisdom, which like Sanya and Vinya is a kind of knowledge, is put into Sakara Kanda. Now, with Sanya, Sati, and memory, confusion often arises as to which skandha the functioning of memory is classified into. The word sanya is often translated as memory, while the word sati is generally translated as recollection, and then sometimes translated as memory. A notable example of this case is Venerable Ananta, who was declared the foremost among those who could remember the Buddha Vasana. The Buddha's words, The Pali word used in this case was sati. Ananda is the foremost of my disciples in regard to being endowed with sati. No confusion exists here. Memory is not a function of one specific factor, but is the result of the whole process. Within this process, sati and sanya are the main factors. Both have meanings that overlap with memory. That is, one function of sanya is also an aspect of memory. Another function of sanya lies beyond the scope of memory. The same with sati. One function of sati corresponds with one aspect of the meaning of memory, while other function of sati lies beyond the bounds of the process of remembering. Importantly, sanya and sati perform different functions within the memory process. Sanya notes or marks an object of awareness. When another object arises, it compares it with the data already observed. If two are marked as the same, there's a recognizing. If there are discrepancies, they are further noted. Both the act of noting and marking or recognizing an object as this or that is comparing the collective data. And the object that is noted, the data so formed and collected, are all called sanya. This corresponds to memory insofar as it provides the conditions for remembering to take place. The important feature of sanya is that it operates as an object that have already arisen only when the object appears. Before one can there be noting, marking, or recognition of it. The function of sati to bring an object of awareness to mind or to hold it to the mind, holding the mind to an object and not allowing the object to slip by. It may be by bringing the awareness of an object that has already passed by, or maybe retaining an object that's just about to pass. The meaning of sati thus encompasses recollecting, bringing the mind, bearing in mind, being able to recall, being able to remember, being without lapses of concentration. It corresponds to memory, specifically in recognizing its capacity to recollect. For this reason, sati is said to find its opposite in sammosa, to forget. Sanya is not the opposite of sammosa. Sati is an initiative from within, driven by intention. Even when no object of awareness appears, sati involves an intention on objects of awareness, and as such is classified as sankhara. Sanya records and stores the data, while sati brings it forward for use. Both good sanya, the clear, systematic noting and collection of data into a meaningful and coherent form, which in turn depends, for example, on the attention and the person's understanding. And good sati, which is the ability to recollect, are factors contributing to a good memory. Imagine two people who are old acquaintances but have not met for many years. After 10 years, Mr. Black meets Mr. Green and recognizes him. Rather, he recalls that he and Mr. Green visited certain places together. Mr. Black recognizes Mr. Green when they meet is sanya. The moment that they recognize each other when they meet, that is sanya. While the subsequent recollection of their past experiences are sati. So the moment they meet, that is sanya, because they recognize each other. But all their collective experience that they have done in the past, that is sati. A telephone is situated in one corner of the room. A telephone book is in another corner. A woman opens the telephone book, searches for a number, and makes a mental note of that number she wants. Then she walks to the other side of the room to make her call, keeping the telephone number in mind. Her reading and noting the number are functions of sanya, whereas her bearing the number in mind while walking across a room is the function of sati. So her reading and remembering the number, then taking that and as she's walking to make that call to the other side of the room, that is the function of sati. When an object of awareness is present, it can be immediately noted. But when the object is not present, and if it is in the mental object stored as memory, sati is used to retrieve it for noting. Moreover, sati may recall old sanya. That is, it can retrieve old impressions or old memories and make them objects of the mind. Sanya will note those impressions again to make them clearer and firmer, or make further notes about them in light of a different objective. The interaction between the skandhas. So I'm going to stop right there. Namo Buddhaya.